أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
So how do we identify the research gaps? Not every article published is a good article. Remember this. Not every journal is a good journal. Not every database is a good database. There are few that is agreed upon and are generally accepted as quality databases and journals. So what are those accepted quality databases and journals? Now in the database there are different journals. For example, Emerald has over 300 journals. Sage has got a number of journals. Springer, Science Direct, Wiley, Taylor and Francis. All these, they have number of different journals linked to these databases. Normally a paper published in these journals or journals that are indexed in Web of Science, they are quality journals. So how do you search Web of Science for journals? For example, let's say we go to master journal list. And if you find a paper on a particular topic, maybe on Google Scholar or somewhere else, and you want to find out whether that journal is a quality journal, you just write the name of the journal here by going into master journal list. So how do you search a journal? Let's say I've read a paper on a particular journal and the journal is, let's say, Product Development Journal. Is it a good journal? Let's see. So let's say this was the journal I was searching for and it is in the master journal list. So yes, it's a good journal. And you can read the papers published in the journal. Moving on. What are explicit research gaps? Something that is openly available. The first thing is, how do you explicitly, or where are these explicit research gaps? How do you identify them? Read or review the introduction. What has been the focus of latest research and why? So if you are reading latest research, if you are reading current research, just read the introduction of that paper. Read what they have mentioned. Read why they think that this particular topic is important. Let's say I'm talking about corporate social responsibility and let's say the top other variable is team outcomes. So if you want to research on corporate social responsibility and team outcomes, read our latest research that is published in that area. Not just their limitations and future research direction as to what they have recommended, but read their introduction, that how they are expressing the importance of the topic. How are they explaining why this particular topic is important? So instead of just focusing on very limited things, what we should do is we should read a few papers in much more detail. So read the introduction of the paper in order to identify that what has been the focus of latest research and why this particular topic has been the focus of research. Why are scholars focusing on this particular topic? Because in the introduction you explain, or the author normally explains, why this particular topic is worth research. What's the importance of this particular topic? Why this particular topic should be studied? And most importantly, you will learn how to write. You will learn how to create this story. You will learn how to create a proper flow of arguments because that paper is already published. The second thing in order to identify the gaps is you have to go through the limitations and future research directions. Now read through the limitations and future research directions. Why shall we read through the limitations and future research direction? Because in that particular limitations and future research directions, the author would have summarized what were the limitations of their research, both in terms of conceptual limitations, in terms of methodological limitation, analytical limitations, and what they propose for future research scholars as to what should be done in future. What variables may be studied in the future. we need to assess the recommendations from existing research by looking at what are the recommendations by these research scholars. So where is this limitations and future research direction? Let's look at a paper. Let's say this is a paper and you are interested in further working on the relationship between CSR and organizational performance with the mediating role of team outcomes. Now, once you read through the introduction, you will know that there is a debate currently going on between CSR and organizational performance. And yes, the relationship is yet to obviously be conclusive. So you will know that there is no conclusive evidence as to whether the relationship between CSR and OP is positive or negative, or there is no relationship. So there is an ongoing debate. So you can add to that debate by situating your research in this area. So what other variables can you study? So once you read the introduction and you know what the debate is all about, you can go to this particular section here, limitations and future research directions. And if you read through this study is one of the few of the earlier studies using symmetrical and non-symmetrical methods in combination. So this is one of the contributions of this particular research. Future studies could gain from also applying this approach. So this is one of the earlier studies. So there are very few studies that have combined both of these approaches, symmetrical and asymmetrical approaches. Furthermore, the model should also be tested in other cultural setting. Again, this is just replication. So instead of just focusing on replication, there should be other inclusion of other variables as well. The study focused on 4 team outcomes. Future studies could also take into consideration other team level outcomes such as team formation, team communication, or team leadership, and assess the impact of CSR on these outcomes and utilize these as actual recipes for identification of configurations that could lead to organizational outcomes. So there are 3 new mediators proposed. So you can take these mediators and conduct your research, but be cautious about it. Why? I'm just going to explain this a little later. Now, if you are conducting research on a particular topic, what you can do is you can read through systematic literature review and meta-analysis. Why shall I read through systematic literature review on a particular topic? Because a systematic literature review would summarize years of research in a single paper. So you do not have to go through or read maybe 200, 300 papers. Rather, if you just read that one particular paper, you will have the summary of all those papers. Let me give you an example. Now let's look at this. Servant leadership, a systematic review and call for future research. So a systematic literature review will have a detailed call for future research. And where is this call? Now let's look at this paper. Here is the summary of publications by year and type of papers. Here are the journals that are publishing this particular topic. Here are the conceptualizations. Furthermore, here are the studies or the number of studies conducted in different countries. Now have a look here. So this can be, obviously, let's look at here, Pakistan, just 5 studies. Let's look at some place else. Let's say UK, only 3 studies. Vietnam, 1 study. Moving on, what variables have been studied and what was the level of the variable? Individual level, group level, or organizational level? This is the nomological network of servant leadership research. Now, this particular network here. So what variables have been studied? What mediators have been studied? What are the outcomes that have been studied? What are the antecedents? Now have a look at the antecedents. Very few antecedents to servant leadership. Now you can focus your research on antecedents of servant leadership. Look at the moderator, not too many. Maybe you can combine the variables in a different form and assess new relationships. Now, most importantly, let's look at this here. Look at this here. They have identified the theory, they have identified the focus, they have identified the research questions that can be taken into account for future research. Now, if you can combine 1 or 2 or 3 questions, then you can formulate your own new and original research. That's the reason I was saying it's very important to look for systematic literature review. Because not only that they summarize the whole 10 years, 20 years of research, they propose detailed future research directions. Similarly, you can search for meta-analysis as well. It's not a good idea that you keep on reading without documenting what you are reading, because obviously you will forget things. So it's always a good idea to prepare an Excel sheet whereby you write from where did you get this particular gap, what was the source of the paper, what was the journal, when was the article written, what was the methodology utilized, what was the sampling technique, what were the analysis techniques. So something like that, just a brief overview, just a brief summary of the paper, so that you know later from where did you get these gaps. Do not just take gaps from one single study. This is very important. What if you use this particular research here for your future study? And based on this one study, you develop your own model. Now let's say somewhere, let's say in America, somebody would have studied this or read this paper as well. Maybe somewhere in Saudi Arabia, maybe somewhere in Russia. They've created the model, they've collected the data, they have analyzed it, they have written the whole paper, and they've submitted it to the journal while you are still writing the literature review. So what's the solution? Instead of taking gaps from one particular paper, try to get gaps from multiple papers. Maybe 2, 3, 4 papers. How shall I go and collect gaps from multiple papers? So let's say if I use this particular paper to develop my model. Now let's say this is my IV, these are my 3 mediators, and this is my DV. Now the word of caution is, obviously do not base your model on just one paper. The reason being, somebody else might have already or might be doing it somewhere else and they might do it quicker. So how do you search for new gaps based on multiple papers? So what I can do is, I can look for papers on CSR, or maybe any other papers on CSR and team outcomes. And in their future research directions, let's say they have recommended that in future research, one should also take team collaboration, other team outcomes than this. Let's say they've already mentioned something like team quality that should be taken into account. So now you have studied another paper, and from that paper you have taken 2 more mediators. Let's say if I go on and I select or read another paper on organizational performance or CSR and organizational performance, and they have recommended a moderator, and let's say they have recommended the moderator as knowledge leadership, for example. Now now my gaps are from 3 papers. So this is my IV, these are my mediators, this is my DV, and this is my moderator between CSR and OP. And my gaps are coming from 3 different papers. Now it's highly unlikely that somebody somewhere in the world would have studied the same papers and would develop a similar kind of model. So this is how you get out of this particular situation where your model is exact replica of someone else working somewhere else. Now another thing that is very important or can be categorized as explicit research gap is call for papers. Now journals regularly call for papers and they present the topic that they are interested in publication. So instead of searching for gaps yourself, what you can do is you can look for other explicit research gaps as call for papers. Now where are these call for papers? Let's say I write Emerald call for papers. Call for papers by Emerald Publishing. Similarly, you can search for Sage, Wiley and other journals or databases or within other databases. And let's see, you sort it by most recent. And look at this. You can obviously select the subjects. I'm interested in education, HR, let's say marketing, tourism and hospitality, and let's say apply. Now these are a recent call for papers in these particular 4 areas or 4 subjects. Now have a look which one interests you. Let's say I'm interested in ethical consumption and climate change in hospitality and tourism. Now here are the details. Here's the background of this call for papers. There are potential topics that you can work on. Detailed list of topics. And based on these topics, search relevant literature. What shall I search on? You should search on these particular things. Using these points, you can develop your own model. And then there are submission procedures, the review process, the timeline, and then critical references that can help you in formulating your research topic. So this is how you can use call for papers to produce or to present or to propose your own research model for future research. Now, explicit research gap is something that is written, that is out there. Implicit research gap is identified through reading. The more you read in depth on a topic, the more you will be able to identify implicit research gap. For example, my area of interest is corporate social responsibility, knowledge management, and let's say project success. So I've written papers on project success, I've written papers on knowledge management, I've written papers on corporate social responsibility. Now, while I'm searching, I couldn't find anything on how social responsibility affects project success. Now, nobody might have written about it that, okay, future research shall focus on social responsibility and project success. Maybe they have written about it, but I haven't read it yet. But certainly it strikes my mind that, okay, these particular topics have not been related with each other. Obviously, this is something that is difficult, but this will come with reading more and more on your topic, on your area of interest. So the first thing that you should do is search whether this is a viable topic or not. The easiest way is just go to Google Scholar. And let's say I write corporate social responsibility, and the other variable is, let's say, project success. Let's see if there any study. Is there any research on corporate social responsibility and project success? Well, it doesn't look so, but let's make our research a bit more specific. Let's put this in inverted commas. And let's write all in title. So these two words should appear in the title of the paper. Any paper on this? No. How did I come up with this idea that these two particular concepts shall be related with each other? Reason being, I've been working on this particular topic or these particular areas for the past 3-4 years. I've been reading on them, I've been writing on them. So implicit research gap will come to your mind, or you will be able to identify implicit research gap, something that is not written, something that is not out there when you keep on reading on these different concepts. Let me give you another idea. Let's say, no, there is not anything, or there is no such paper on corporate social responsibility and life satisfaction. Let's say another area that I've been working on, let's say if there is something on knowledge management. Just one single paper. But corporate social responsibility is known by other words as well. Business social responsibility, corporate social responsibility. So let's see a knowledge management perspective of corporate social responsibility. Here's one paper. Human resource management model, aspects of knowledge management and corporate social responsibility. But obviously, have a look here. Not many papers. So there may be a significant gap in this particular area that one can work on. So this is how you search for implicit research gaps. Moving on, an important step is consult a subject expert. This is very important because the subject expert would know the subject in and out. That particular researcher would have worked on this particular area for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. He would know that if this particular topic is a viable topic or not, if it's a strong enough topic or not. Now, once you have proposed your model, obviously you have to probe your model. Assess each relationship. How many of these relationships have been tested before? How many of them have not been tested before? So you know that if you are making a viable contribution to the research or not. So I just mentioned a strong research topic. What do we mean by strong research topic? A strong research topic would mean that there are strong variables in your study. Variables that the reader wants to read about. For example, let's say we have a topic, impact of employee satisfaction on commitment. In this case, both of these variables are individual level variables. They are not contributing too much towards the organization. Maybe to a certain extent, they are weak variables. There is too much research on these particular topics. These variables have been extensively researched on. So what's a strong variable? A strong variable is something that is more or less an organizational variable or organizational level variable, like CSR, like leadership, like sustainability. Sustainability is a new area. There's very little research on this particular area. A variable is strong if you've got maybe journals on that particular topic. For example, we've got a journal, Corporate Social Responsibility and Environmental Management. So this particular concept of corporate social responsibility is a strong topic, is a strong area. Why? Because there is a whole journal on it. Not just journal, there are journals on it, on this particular topic. Leadership. Quality. But I do not think so if there is a journal on commitment or satisfaction. So your topics should be strong enough. They should be something that people would like to read on. They must be, obviously you can use these topics or these areas in your research, but they should be combined with organizational or group level variables. Something that is worth reading for the readers, for the academicians, for the researchers, for the business community as well.